Hi everyone, welcome to Binah Says. On today's episode, we have Dr. Golda Joseph with us. Thank you, Golda, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we're here to reveal your wisdom, and I know we've had many chats. There's so much wisdom to reveal. We have to contain the Golda. I know your background stems in various areas from regenerative health, holistic health, expressive art therapy, where science meets spirituality. So I would love to do a deeper dive into all the different frameworks and systems that you've studied and that you teach now. How does that sound to you?
Sounds great.
Amazing.
Thank you.
So I want to start our conversation with the question, if someone is feeling disconnected from their body, their purpose, their inner voice, where should they begin?
In the present moment. So what we do is breathe, and which is what we're always doing, but it's also bringing the awareness into the present so that we can connect the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit with the environment that they're in. In a session, so I do a technology that I call the regeneration method. It's a psychosomatic tools, and I use expressive art therapy to actually help people to integrate the presenting issues, whether they're personal, professional, relationship-based, vocational. So that's where we begin. We begin in the moment. We take a breath, and then I ask my clients to scan their body, just sense in what are they feeling, and then give me a presenting issue. Begin telling this story.
And you've been doing this work for over 5 decades.
Yes, I have.
And how did you get into this world?
Well, I came in this way. So I was a conscious clairvoyant since the crib, and I had these natural, intuitive, imaginative, inspirational faculties. And my family, concentration camp survivors, both my mother and father, who were first cousins, and I could sense and feel energy and see what was happening even before I could speak. So I have a recollection of that. From there, I went through normal school, elementary, junior high, with that awareness still intact. At a very young age, I realized I was different, and I began to speak about what I saw and felt, energy fields and telepathy, different faculties, innate faculties that I believe every child has. And when I spoke about it, my mother basically said, "You're stupid, you're crazy, that doesn't exist." So I stopped talking about it. And like the first 5 years of life, I was drawing, I was acting, I knew that I had something different, and I was able with that to begin to understand what we today call the spiritual world.
Wow. So you were experiencing something that at the time you were too young to understand. And when you tried to express it, there was not the support that you would have hoped for coming from family. So how did that change your life?
Well, I learned not to talk about what I saw and felt. My first grade teacher acknowledged it, and she said, "Well, why don't you draw what you see?" Which was brilliant. That was before I could spell or read or write, because I was slow to do those things, because I lived in a very kind of imaginative realm. And so I would start to draw the color that I saw around her. And that was really the first recognition that I had, that I could see that way. I think most children can, but they don't talk about it because, like I was, relatively judged or misunderstood because it was not physical.
Was it something you could turn on and off, or was it just always on?
As a child, I couldn't turn it on and off. I didn't really learn to turn it on. Well, I learned to not talk about it and to draw. And then when I learned to write and to paint and to sculpt and to act. So that's what I did with it until the age of 11 when the corpus callosum connected. And I began to be able to use other, like, normal faculties, reading, writing, speaking, that others could understand. And I didn't share the intuitive, telepathic knowledge, or I just allowed it to be expressed as a creative child, and then ended up with going into art education. And then at the age of 21, I moved into really on a professional level, beginning to study Jungian psychology with an expressive art therapist in the Bay Area, and ended up at the California Institute of Integral Studies, where I got a double master's in East-West psychology and marriage, family, and child counseling. And there we explored all different forms of humanistic and transpersonal psychology. I met a Buddhist nun whose name is Dr. Rina Surkar, who brought Vipassana meditation to America, and she taught me how to close down some of the faculties that I had through mindfulness practices and extensive meditation work, and where I studied Buddhist psychology very deeply and understood that I wasn't crazy anymore and that I had these natural faculties. I actually realized it at the age of 13 when I ran away from home. And I ran away from home, guided by God, to the Bodhi Tree bookstore that had an open house that day. And when I opened the door and crossed the threshold, I realized, oh my goodness, this is a bookstore. And then it was full of ancient wisdom and teachings, and the teachers that came before the 1960s. This was 1965. So it was very early, yet there was libraries full of wisdom, such as Ledbetter's work on the chakras, Dr. Rudolf Steiner's work on spiritual science, the Buddha, Christ, all of that. So I wasn't crazy anymore because I had found a resource that was quite exciting and took me on this journey.
Sounds like my kind of bookstore.
Oh, you would have loved it. It was the first New Age bookstore in Los Angeles. So
Wow. Do you think the majority of people today suppress their intuitive nature that we're born with?
Well, I think today it's more mainstream than it was in the 1960s. The 1970s, I think, were really the beginning of this kind of integration of mind-body therapies, conscious spirituality. I was at the California Institute of Integral Studies in the third year of its development. So we already had many teachers coming through, and obviously many spiritual traditions. So there's a long history of the Institute, but I worked directly with Dr. Haridas Chowdhury, who was the founder, who came from the Sri Aurobindo ashram in India, and his mission was to integrate Eastern teachings with Western transpersonal teachings. So that takes us back to the early 1970s. And Alan Watts and, those that came before me were already awakening in the 1960s. So my generation, the baby boomers, we're really, I think, at the beginning of this reemergence, because many teachers, such as Dr. Rudolf Steiner, was the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Wow. Are you still in touch with these faculties today?
Yes.
And how have you maintained them, since a young age, which is something I think is very rare?
Yes. Well, I was gifted to have the opportunity to become an artist. So that was a really important piece of my development, both through painting, sculpting, dancing. There was a lot going on in the Bay Area, so I didn't feel strange anymore. I left home at the age of 19, moved to San Francisco, where it was happening. There was an awakening at every level during the Vietnam War, and I didn't feel crazy anymore. Actually, I studied from the age of 13, so I had already a large bibliography in my cells of both Eastern and Western traditions that enabled me to maintain those faculties and cultivate them up until today.
Do you believe connecting to our intuition is trainable? And how do you think more people can awaken that connection?
Absolutely, I believe that intuition is an art and a science. So, I teach this regeneration method, which is really to awaken intuitive faculties, the higher faculties. So intuition lives in the solar plexus. It comes from here,
Your
the
gut?
belly,
Your gut?
your gut.
Okay, your gut.
Exactly. You ask somebody a question, and they say, "I feel," and they usually point either to their heart or to their gut. So I have a gut feeling about that. So intuition is in the solar plexus. Inspiration comes from the heart, and imagination comes from the throat center and the third eye center. So we are all born with energy centers that the Hindu ancient teachings, and as well as Kabbalah and other schools, speak about the chakras. So you can develop the chakra system through different exercises, through empathic wisdom, is what I call it. So you can begin to really look at your own story through gesture, sound, movement, visualization, dramatization. You can develop intuition through the inner work, meditation, breath work, postural integration, many, many, many schools of how to become more sensitive to your bodies.
As someone who's practiced meditation for decades, what do you think most people misunderstand about meditation?
That you need a certain preparation for good meditation. So it's not just observing your thinking and your feeling or your breath or, a lot of people have a hard time with meditation because you have to get into a mood. And that mood includes reverence, awe, right? It has different qualities to it. So you have to cultivate those qualities and prepare the vehicle, the body, the mind, for a deep meditation practice. So there actually are tools to develop. And like I said, you can open up the chakra system, back to the intuition, that connects us through meditation to looking at what is missing. So we all come in with this chakra system, and in ancient India, the gurus could read their bodies. So they had these intuitive faculties from the beginning of time. We were actually more intuitive. Gradually, we came down into form. We got very materialistic, back to, Rome. We became very hardened. We got different epochs that we've gone through: ancient India, Persia, Egypt, right, Greek, Rome. Now we are in what's called the fifth post-Atlantean epoch. So what is happening is humanity is crossing the threshold. Humanity is awakening, just like a conversation like we had today, and what we see around us. I mentioned earlier, there's 1 billion people who have crossed the threshold. There's 1 billion people on this planet that are doing some form of yoga or meditation. Just wrap your head around that. That's huge. We all think we're by ourselves, that we're alone, but in fact, there are many schools of meditation, but I believe that preparation is of value, and that's through really opening up those faculties of being able to see, clear seeing, clairsentience, clairaudience, right? Clear listening, being able to hear, using your natural faculties, but also opening up to the inner voice that we talked about. And then obviously, Claire everything, because the heart is the center. The heart is the fourth chakra. The heart opens. There's 12 petals of the heart. 6 of them are what we would call the 6 basic exercises that open the heart in preparation for meditation. So there are a lot of tools. There's a science. The Buddha had the science. Steiner had a science. Kabbalah has a science. We all have these different states of consciousness, and it's really about practicing and both the art and the science of meditation.
I personally want to go deeper into my own meditation practice. I know maybe you can help me with that.
I hope so. Yeah. I would love
to.
And
I think if more of us meditated and made it more of a daily practice, and I think the world would be a little bit a better place.
Yeah.
Where do the Eastern and the Western philosophies collide, and where do they kind of come together?
If we look at the history of the ages, the Buddha obviously came from before the Western philosophers. We have Hinduism, right, which is the awareness of the chakra system, and so it's more like a continuum, I think, between those Eastern teachings. Some people believe in Atlantis, so in the Bible we talk about the flood, and then Adam and Eve, right? So we're kind of going all the way back to ancient mystery schools, there are many that both streams developed. You've got the ancient Indian stream, you've got the ancient Chinese, and then you've got the ancient Western esoteric philosophies, Judaism, Christianity, and now holism.
What is holism?
Well, I think we're living in a very interesting time. In many ways, I established the first holistic medical centers in the Bay Area with my husband, and at that point, so that's 1970s, and we were already looking at how is the mind, body, and soul and spirit connected? And that, I would say, is kind of the root of holism, but also how are those 4 faculties, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, connected to the planetary, and so the cosmos as well as to the Earth's evolution.
And so, how long were you in the Bay Area working in this holistic health industry?
I was there for 22 years. So a long time. So I got a double master's in East-West Psych and Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling with a transpersonal emphasis, a doctorate in nutrition, and it was really the beginning of mind-body medicine. I worked with this Buddhist nun, Dr. Sirkar, and she taught the ancient teachings of the Buddha, which included a practice called the 32 parts of the body meditation, what today we would call body-mind connection. So if we go back again, I think ancient Hindu, I'm more familiar with Hinduism, Chinese medicine, and Buddhism, kind of being the roots of the Western philosophers, and then that goes back Greek times, Persian times, Egyptian times. So, you can really look at both streams, the Eastern and the Western. They both have a really strong historical background in looking at the whole person and the earth. So for me, it's the beginning of time from which we come. And you and I are studying the Kabbalah together now, and as we learn those stories in the Old Testament, we really can see that they're archetypal. It's the nature of being human. We all have archetypal patterns, that have been defined by people like Jung. So, I think C.G. Jung, Dr. Jung, was the beginning of naming the archetypes for our times. Obviously, those archetypes have always lived in humanity from the beginning of time. So,
and I know we've talked about this framework that you've put together called the Circle of Time. Can you share a little bit with us about what that is about?
Sure. I'd love to. So it's based on Dr. Rudolf Steiner's work of human development. So I make a lot of references to Steiner because he was a polymath, died in 1925, left 350 volumes, 6,500 lectures. Really, he was a conscious clairvoyant and was able to look into what's called the Akashic records, or the script that revolves around the earth that explains everything that has happened into the history of humanity. And so I think one of the major contributions is understanding both who we are as cosmic beings, how we're connected to the planetary periodicity cycles, which I talk about in Circle of Time. Also, I look at the number system and then the developmental phases that Steiner's taught that come from far back. I found them in the Upanishads. And in the Upanishads, it talks about the 7-year cycle. I think the same in the Kabbalah and many other mystery schools. So we're looking at the 7-year cycles, and in the Upanishads, it talks about the chakra system and how it evolves from every 7 years. So it goes up the back of the spine to 49 and then back down to the end of life, 90 plus. And that is a developmental model that really connects to the rhythms of the cosmos. So the 7-year cycle comes from the planet known as Saturn. Most of us have heard about the Saturn return, the 28-year cycle. So in Circle of Time, I'm looking at the 7-year cycle, the 12-year cycle that connects to vocation, the 18-and-a-half-year cycle, which was known in Egyptian times as the sorrow cycle. So in Egyptian times, we are all time being, chronos, and in Egypt, they looked at the rhythm of the moon. So the moon comes back in your birth chart every 18 and a half years, which the Egyptians said that is when the door to heaven opens. Then the big cycles that most people have heard about are the 21-year cycles, which are the maturation cycles, which I speak about. And that is physical maturity the first 21 years, psychological maturity the second 21 years, spiritual maturity the next 21 years, and the last 21 years of, or what I call the quadrants of the circle, is transpersonal maturity. And then we start new birth again at 84. But it really illustrates how there's a time and there's a developmental model that most people are missing to understand really what is how do we mature, how do we not get stuck in perpetual adolescence or any of the other phases or stages of the journey. And I feel like that's a major contribution, and I'm publishing Circle of Time at present, so I'm really excited about that. I have written it and taught it and explained it for many years, and I was kind of waiting until now for humanity to be ready to receive it.
Wow. So it sounds like every civilization had its own way of tracking our development as a human species and how that relates at a macro level with the universe and the cosmos and how everything is interconnected. Nothing is really random. And there's a time for everything.
Yeah, I think so. I would say it's both and. So it is both archetypal and, as you're speaking, through different maps of consciousness in different times. But on the other side, it's very individualized. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about like the 4 temperaments, like your specific way of interpreting reality. It's very unique as we are, as special as we each are. It is the same with these cycles, but this is an archetypal map so that you understand whether it's an introverted phase or an extroverted phase, so you can understand where your child's development, if you're a parent, or your partner's development based on what age they are. So what I did with the circle is I created something called an age interpretation method. So based on your age, I know a whole lot about you because I know where you are.
So what would you tell me about me in my phase now, being 29 years old?
Yeah, so you're in a very powerful phase. As I spoke earlier, the Saturn returns every 28 years in your birth chart. Saturn is the planet of new beginnings, total transformation. So, and it's relative, so it's not exactly 28 years. The cycle has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I say from like 27 and a half to 29 and a half, 27 to 30, something like that. You're in this transition phase where who you were the first 28 years is done. And I know that you're getting married, starting a new life, so it's very appropriate that now you're entering a whole new phase of your journey.
Mm-hmm. You heard it here first. This is a live announcement, yes. And so where were you in your life at my age?
I had my first daughter at 31. And I have fit at the age of, I guess, 29, 30. I decided I would become a professional parent. I wanted to be a conscious parent. So I had my free years, and as I spoke, the Institute from 21 to like 26. And then I ended up going into organization development, facilitating CEOs, going from being an intuitive healer of the body, soul, and spirit into corporate America, which was really interesting. And so that was a major transition for me. I was married at 24, and we opened our first holistic health center at the age of 30. So I also entered the training of Waldorf education. I don't know if you've ever heard of Waldorf education, but Rudolf Steiner left trainings, many, in different fields. And in education, he was hired by the Waldorf Astoria to educate the employees. So he was lecturing to the employees of the original Waldorf Astoria factory that made cigars. And the parents came to him and said, "Can you please educate our children?" And so he created the first Waldorf school based on that developmental model that we're talking about in Circle of Time. So every child at a certain age, so developmentally, you're born. At the age of 7, you're either losing your teeth or if you've lost your teeth. At the age of 14, you're hitting puberty. And then that continues. So you can see physiologically every 7 years the changes. And he speaks of it as the child's changing consciousness. So between 28 and 30, you're asking about my life at 29, I was in the midst of moving from being an intuitive healer, massage therapist, counselor, teacher, to preparing for motherhood. And I ended up doing 15 years of Waldorf teacher training. I never went into the classroom, but I studied and I taught other moms because it was missing. Everybody tells you get married. Nobody tells you about the developmental phases of a marriage, which I also have developed. And nobody talks about the development, healthy development of the child. I found Rudolf Steiner's work, obviously there's Piaget and Erickson and, kind of the traditional psychology people, but it didn't have the same depth as what Steiner did. Through the Waldorf school system. So that was really that transition. And at the same time, we established the first holistic health centers in the Bay Area, one in San Francisco, one in San Rafael. So I was pregnant, new clinics,
You were doing a lot.
At the burgeoning moment of our times.
Yeah.
Really.
Wow.
Very, very, very grateful for that.
You mentioned being a conscious parent. What does that mean exactly?
Well, number one, it's understanding yourself and where you are and having the ability to really not project your mother-father dynamic into your marriage or into your family. So it really starts with self-awareness. Steiner talks about the 7 conditions, and I think I would apply that here. So the first condition is self-care. The second condition is empathy, self-empathy toward yourself, empathy toward others. The third is that thoughts and feelings are real. The fourth is that boundaries are essential. And so for you to know where you begin and end. The fifth is really looking at how do you make decisions. And the sixth is gratitude. And the seventh is a combination of all 6. So applying those 7 conditions to yourself first and then to your family is essential. Also, one of the core pieces of the puzzle for me was understanding the 4 temperaments. That comes from Greek medicine that Steiner brought into the classroom to really look and understand your temperament first, whether it's fire, choleric, air, which is sanguine, melancholic, which is earth, or phlegmatic, which is water. And in Greek times, that's the way physicians diagnosed a client.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can learn developmentally, where is the child? Where are you? Where's your husband or your partner? What is your temperament? What is your specific age and the psychosomatic, psychospiritual meaning of that age? And then from there, many, many tools, that we can integrate from different schools of wisdom, such as Kabbalah.
So it's first understanding yourself.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how you make decisions.
Yeah, it's the fifth condition. And there's a system that I work with clients on, and I use a 3-day process. So it's beginning with what is living in you, what is the presenting issue, what is the story behind that condition, what do you bring to it. Only 5 to 10% maximum of the decisions that we make are conscious, which is really interesting, right? Wow. That means that 90% of what and how you make a choice is really based on the unconscious, on the earlier programs, on what your cultural upbringing, what your, all of the learning that you've done up until that point, how that is affecting your decision making. So, and then there's a process that I take people through, which is a 3-day process. Once they've made a decision, let's say in a session, I have them sleep on it and revisit it before they actually take action, to digest what does it mean to them to take it into the spiritual world when we go to sleep at night, to come back to see what is presented over that 3-day period before they take action, so that it's not an impulsive decision. It is a decision that has depth and breadth and understanding before we speak it. And I think it's really valuable to allow yourself to digest what does it mean to you, because often an impulsive decision is done out of forces that maybe are harmful.
So all of this, I would say, falls under the broader category of inner work. How important is it for each and every one of us to be doing this inner work? And what even is inner work? It's something that we talk about a lot, but maybe for someone that hasn't heard about it, how would you define it?
Ooh, that's big. Yeah. So inner work, there are many, many ways to access your inner self. In essence, it's always happening. It's more about, I think, consciousness. Is that you're consciously choosing to look inside. Again, you can do that through meditation. You could do that through journaling. You could do that through the arts. You could do that through breath work. There are so many different now mainstream tools, but it really is through your self-understanding. We're kind of back to condition number 1. Who am I? And how do I bring who I am to others? Cultivating empathy, for example, is a huge piece of the puzzle. So we're always doing it. We're always doing inner work. It's just what level of consciousness are you at where you can see your, I call it the multidimensional being that you are. Because there are many parts of you. I also do that through the regeneration method that I teach and practice. So I'm sure you know the Russian doll. This is a good way to share it with people as well, right?
I wish we had one.
Yeah, I do. I have one at home. But yeah, next time we're together, I'll bring her. And so you have the Russian doll has 6 to 10 different dolls within the core doll. And so our outer self is the outer self. But when you start peeling back the layers, many speak of it as layers of an onion, but the doll is really amazing as a teaching tool to go, who is the inner self? in essence, the inner self is the little one. Who were you inside your mother's womb? That inner self is still living in you. So many people do inner child work to access their inner self. So there are dimensions to it. Many people do therapy. Many people go on spiritual pilgrimages. There's many ways to access it. Obviously, meditation is a big way because you're just sitting with yourself, observing the present moment. And in that, you begin to realize, well, there's an inner voice. There are different dimensions to who I am. And each one of those dolls, we can put them, I actually do that in therapy sessions. So it's more like theater. It's like that part of you has that memory and that experience. If you step out of that part and you look at her, you see something else. Often I say, so how old is she? Because that little one, the memory that you have unconsciously from being 5 years old when somebody said you're a bad girl, for example, right? Or you got hit or you have to digest that, but often we don't. That's what we call trauma, right? Is that there's memories that are housed in the soma, in the body, that we can access. So that type of work enables us to begin to open the door to the inner you, to those different dimensions that bring you into the present moment.
I know as a healer, you've done extensive work, in the human body. And where have you seen people holding the most trauma in their physical body from their past experience?
So I'm going to speak that the same way that I did the other question, is as unique as you look. That's as unique as those, what I call toxic imprints are. And so why are they toxic imprints? So we all have numerous bodies or numerous experiences in this lifetime that came in through sound, gesture, movement, visualization, the drama of life, the environment that we're in, the culture that we come from, etc., right? So here we are, your unique self has that memory. They've never found memory in the body. It's really interesting. There's no central place of memory. And that's that really speaks to what you're asking me.
So it's everywhere.
It's different for everyone. I'd say often it's the heart, right? It's like what we remember when we had a broken heart, when we had a severe loss. But I use the hands as the way for me to help the client understand show me. I say, scan your body from head to toe. After they tell me the story and we have a matching picture and they make a wish, which we could talk about, and then I say, okay, so now show me in your body what it's doing to you. Scan your body from head to toe. They'll find an area of the body where it feels dark or dense or heavy or painful, or they have an injury or they have an illness or mass or whatever. And we can enter into that place of the body. And then rather than just living with it on the inside, we take it from the inside and we bring it out. And we use the hands to start, and then I have you gesture it with your whole body, and then I ask you to step out of it and to see it. The tool is called Enter, Exit, and Behold. And I've facilitated thousands of people, and no one ever said, I don't see anything. Everyone sees something, and they see themselves often in a younger age, often. Not always, sometimes it's a present tense experience, and so they'll see themselves in this age, but just by stepping out of it, they begin to observe their inner world through the higher three faculties that you and I have spoken of: imagination, inspiration, and intuition. You can't see any of those, but you also can't see a feeling or a thought. Show me a feeling. Show me a thought. Isn't that amazing? And we all think and we all feel and we all know that thoughts and feelings are real. Even if we cover them up, bury them, they can be revealed.
Exactly. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right, right. Yeah.
And I know that Steiner talked a lot about how thinking is one of, like our senses, a major organ of perception.
Yes.
So doing that inner work allows us to tap more into that organ of how our thoughts are influencing
Yes.
our feelings, our physical body.
Yeah, where do thoughts come from? We have them constantly. And it's, what Steiner is saying is also ancient wisdom, because you look at Vipassana meditation or what the Buddha taught, and it's all about observing the mind, observing the thinking, observing the feelings. When you sit many, many hours a day, so I've facilitated many 10-day silent retreats with Rena, and you sit for 14 to 16 hours. Your body has pain in it, but you observe the pain. You don't become it. And the pain is a lesson. Pain is a messenger, right? The body is a messenger. It reflects everything. So that's why I use psychosomatic expressive art therapy as the primary tool versus just talking heads. So there's a place to talk, there's a place to counsel and give advice, to coach, to consult. But that is a limitation in our times. Even studying, reading, or learning scripture, whatever it is, it's really what is living behind the intellect. So this separation between mind and body is very rapidly transforming over the last 60 years of study for me. It was very esoteric, and I was really on the fringe for a very long time. And now that I've come back to America after 20 years of living in Panama, I'm like, your generation is completely conscious. And I would say there's 1 trillion people on Earth that are consciously practicing these tools to access their inner self and transform those toxic imprints so that they can evolve. Because as long as you're stuck in those imprints, you're stuck in those patterns, they're running you. Back to what Ariel was speaking about, is like we're only conscious, and science knows this, 5-10% of what reality is. So it's really now everybody's doing trauma therapy. 20 years ago when I left, nobody was talking about trauma therapy. I went to Europe to study psychosomatic expressive art therapy with somebody who studied Steiner's work. So my work is really based on that. But it really is in the soma. And then how do you get to it? Well, often through non-verbal tools. It's really important that we not just keep, thinking, but thoughts are spiritual activities.
I remember talking to my dad and asking him what he thought was more powerful, our thought or our action. And we disagreed, in a collaborative way, but he believed that actions hold more power than thoughts. And my view was that without thought, we cannot act. So our thoughts are the seed level of our action. That's what Kabbalah teaches us. So if we can actually control our thoughts, then we can control our actions. But without our thoughts, we cannot even act.
Right.
But then his point was the amount of energy it takes to actually go from thought to action is so high and so great that the action itself is more powerful than the thought. So two different viewpoints. I think both have their place in the world. What is your take?
So I do both. So I'm very Eastern in my thinking or in my perception of reality. So I do start with talk. I do start with what do you feel and think, and then that's called the conversation phase because there's a place for it. That's your story. In order for you to trust me and for me to attune with your experience, because you're the expert of your own experience. I'm not the expert of your experience. I have a toolkit. That's basically I developed myself. And studied many different schools and practiced. But thinking, in Buddhism, thinking is core. You observe the thought, but then when the thoughts go away, there's this open space that is very transformative. We go to sleep at night, we're not thinking. Right, so that's the next dimension. Where are we going? As far as the transformational work goes, I would agree with your dad. It's also kind of like a male-female thing, right? Because the thinking is more of a masculine, like intellect, that side of the brain hemisphere, that part of the person. So we really need to understand our thoughts. But it really is, in order to change it, we need to take action. Mm-hmm. So my work is action therapy. What I'm describing to you is, okay, show me what it's doing to you. Metabolize it. Show me in your body. Because without the action, it remains there. So you can think about it and know lots and lots of stuff and study all these different systems, but you still are left with that imprint that is living in the body. Mm-hmm. So you have to do both, mind, body. Mm. Can't separate the two. Westerners are either or. That's our consciousness. That's our philosophy. That's the way we're trained. In the East, it's both and. Mm. So I'm more Eastern in my thinking, I would say. So I would agree with both you and your father. Mm.
I remember I went to India about a year ago and I saw an Ayurvedic doctor, and it was a very interesting experience. I think she had me give her my wrist, mm-hmm. and just by touching me, like mm-hmm. with her two fingers, she knew I was deficient in some vitamin. And I was shocked by this. It was a much more intuitive session, let's say, a relationship between a doctor and a patient. And it's very different from seeing a doctor here in the United States. And I know you have a lot of experience with this in the medical world. So what do you think is the biggest missing piece in our current healthcare system?
Well,
talking about the body, the mind, the spirit, and how it all connects, how are we not bringing this more into our current healthcare system?
Well, that's a major crisis for our times. I call it fragmentation. And we're really, medicine is brilliant, and you have all these specialties, and that actually goes into many different fields. Everybody is specialized. But we, as a human being, are not isolated and specialized. We are whole. So medicine, that art that you're describing, the Chinese take pulses. I'm not as familiar with Ayurvedic diagnosis, but when you say she touched your wrist, I think she could probably feel certain frequencies at that place in your body, because that's how Chinese medicine doctors read the body. So it might be very similar with Ayurveda. But, I love conventional medicine for its specialization when you need a surgery or when you have a chronic degenerative disease that needs diagnosis and all the machines. And it's absolutely brilliant. But the intervention needs to be lifestyle. So we know that more than 75% of any condition is lifestyle related. 25% is the physiology, the biology, the biochemistry, which you know I do a lot about. So I do labs. I look at the neuroendocrine system. I look at the cortisol, the DHEA, the hormones, and the underlying amino acids that are really governing the system. The other piece I look at is chronobiology, which again ties back into circle of time. But we have every cell of the body has a clock. Every organ, every system. We have the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, which pretty much governs our daily circadian rhythm. It governs our monthly cycle, you know, and so you have these very time-oriented functions that have been validated through chronobiology. And many of the sciences, I mean, that is a science that you know doctors have evaluated. Many of them are holistic. Many of them look at, when you think about that, but every MD knows all of this. I mean, I read their biochemistry books. They know all of this, but when you read that, you see it's named, it's compartmentalized into a system and a function, but it's missing the human element. Because how do emotions, how do feelings, how do thoughts contribute to a chronic degenerative disease? I mean, obviously, we have genetics as well. So, you know, there are different levels, and there's geneticists. So, when we look at medicine today, it's extremely evolved. And I think more and more doctors, especially in your generation, are looking at the whole person. And they even now are going to teach nutrition to doctors. Imagine that.
Exciting.
So, isn't that exciting? Yeah. And I'm pretty current on the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. So our current administration has got lots of people like me meeting ongoingly. I actually sat on the board of NIH and was one of the doctors that established complementary and alternative health care system within NIH, which is being reignited in our times. It's very exciting to me. So to really look at, you know, how these different schools of medicine now are integrating. Chiropractic has gone up and down, but, you know, physical medicine, structural medicine has always been around. You know, lots of different systems in medicine. Homeopathy, that also is being mainstreamed again. Never left India and Europe, but that's energy medicine. So, you know, when we talk now about medicine, I think that more and more of the holistic, integrative, functional systems, you know, biological systems, those approaches are being integrated. And currently, that's what I'm working on.
That's exciting.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your company that you have?
Yes. Well, I'm at a point in my life, and I think that it is a point of time that this fragmentation is ready to be resolved. And so what I'm doing is a new system of medicine that I am calling a human regulatory intelligence. So I'm looking at the neuroendocrine system, but I'm also looking at these other systems such as circle of time and the regeneration method, psychology for freehood. So I'm looking at how do we measure and monitor the whole person, all 12 dimensions of what does it mean to be human, and beginning to apply that to large systems change. So it's very exciting to me. I've spent the last 9 months researching and developing what I'm now calling the human regulatory system that integrates all these different schools, including, biological medicine, systems biology, and chronobiology, and nutrition, obviously. So you can't. So I think we are at a juncture where we really now are going to need a system where the new generations are no longer looking at compartmentalizing just one organ, because the heart has many dimensions, for example. So, but not everyone is going to adopt that. We still are going to need surgeons or machines that provide surgery when you need it. It's phenomenal, right? So rather than fragmentation and separation, we're going to move more and more into integration in order for regeneration to occur. And that also connects with regeneration of the planet and creating new ecosystems and ways of living together that are not fragmented or isolated.
I love that topic.
Yes.
When people talk about regeneration, a lot of the times they just focus on the physical, but I know that you mean something much deeper. So what would your definition of regenerative be?
So I put regeneration on a continuum. So again, coming back from the 70s, I worked with Donald Ardell and established the wellness movement. And that was a breakthrough. It used to be, health, disease and health. And he went from wellness going beyond health. So now I'm looking at regeneration, beyond regeneration. Which I just spoke about, is rhythm, regulation, regeneration. But regeneration has a scale, and so we can put you on the scale from degeneration to regeneration. So we can look at that on the planetary level. So the planet we know is degenerating. Lots of species are becoming extinct. We have lots of issues in the water, in the air, in the soil. Your lifestyle is very fragmented, isolated lifestyle, which, like what we experienced through COVID, was very, very painful and alienating for many and killed many. So we have to really reimagine what would a regenerative society look like. So beginning with, we need to regenerate the soil, we need to regenerate the water, we need to regenerate family systems, we need to regenerate societies. Because if we don't regenerate the body, the soul, the spirit, humanity, societies, the earth, it will continue to degenerate.
Yep.
So regeneration is huge to me. When I established it, so I own regeneration.com, which is like, of course I do, right? I'm a Bay Area girl, right? And from that time, of Be Here Now, with Ram Dass and all of my friends who were in the Bay Area, who were like Richard Brand and this one and that one, that we were all like starting this whole new wave of understanding our ecosystem and how to create what I'm calling a salutogenic, humane ecosystem.
What does that mean?
Wow. So salutogenesis was a science that was developed by an MD researcher named Aaron Antonovsky in Israel. And what he did is he studied women who were survivors of the concentration camps, and he wanted to look at why did they survive and where, others didn't. And what he found was what he called salutogenesis. So what they were focused on and what he was focused on is, what does it mean to be healthy versus what do I do about this disease? So salutogenesis looks at how many, as we've been talking today, not homostasis, but heterostasis. We have all these multiple divisions and faculties and systems, which makes us heterogeneous. The other major principle in salutogenesis is the theory of coherence. How do all these systems work together? And so that system ended up being a whole new philosophy that is now applied to health, education, society, many, many, many schools of thought. It's more known in Europe, obviously Israel, and it is a real blessing to be able to not look at life through a disease model, not what is wrong with you, and but what can you do to create health? So salutogenesis is the study of the creation of health.
Wow. So many frameworks and systems that you've studied and that you're able to share with us, which is amazing, and it inspires me to want to learn more about the giants, as you mentioned, the shoulders of the giants that we stand on, and how we can build the next future for our generation.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, I look forward to doing that together.
Where do you see yourself in your circle of time right now? Where are you, and what do you look forward to?
Well, I'm in a very exciting phase of life. I am ready to teach, to mentor, to train the next generation in all these different schools. And that to me is the next chapter in preparation for the metamorphosis and transformation that is inevitable to going from this physical expression of life back to the spiritual expression of who I really am.
And who is that? Who is Dr. Golda really?
Wow, that's a big question. I think what we just spoke about today gives the audience kind of a understanding of what is living within me. But I've been a mother. I've had 3 children. I've been a grandmother. I have 4 children. I had a 50-year marriage. So I had a lot of great things in this lifetime. And I think that who I am is a woman who has an opportunity, has had a golden life, so many opportunities to serve. So I've seen over 100,000 people. I think my next step is to reach millions through these new tools that we have, both through the AI platform that I'm developing, as well as in service to others who are on this path.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us on Binah Says. And I know there's so much more that we could have talked about. This is what the universe wanted to flow through our conversation today. But I hope to dive deeper into different topics in the future with you.
I'm sure we will, and I'm sure we will create a salutogenic, humane community in the future.
I would love that.
Look forward to that.
Thank you, Golda.
Thank you, dear.
Thanks for tuning in to Binah Says.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johnny. That's our wrap.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eris.
Yeah.